In this scan workflow, we are going to scan 2 articulator-mounted models. We are going to have an upper jaw molar as our restoration, but we are going to scan it as a part of the arch. So we are not going to remove the die and scan it separately. We're going to, of course, use the 2 scanning positions simultaneously in the F8 scanner. And the bite scanning will actually happen on top of our new feature or accessory, the articulator plate. And the articulator will be positioned on top of that, and it will actually be in a nice and static position, so we are not compromising our occlusion there. So more on that a little bit later. The F8 tools we are going to use for this workflow are the transfer podiums, so these lower podiums that come with the scanner. What is worth mentioning at this point is the fact that with a lot of our scan accessories, you will either see 1 or 2 stripes painted on them. So on the podiums, you can see this, and also on some of our transfer plates. These markings indicate in which position inside the scanner they are supposed to be placed. Position number 2 means 2 stripes, and it is located here in the back end of the scanner. And then position number 1 with 1 stripe is meant to be placed in the front of the scanner. And then that also correlates to the fact that if you have a gypsum model that is to be placed on position number 2, then you also use the corresponding scan, the transfer plate for the articulator. So in this case, we are using a Stratos articulator, and to that we have what we call an articulator-specific transfer plate that has a unique connection to this articulator that you then mount on the transfer podium. In case you do not have an articulator-compatible transfer plate, you are always free to use the generic one, on top of which you can actually just glue a mounted model. And then you use it in the same way. You will attach it to the transfer podium with the corresponding markings. For this case, I'm going to make a new order in Dental Manager. Our restoration is a first molar in the upper jaw, and we're going to select a fully anatomical crown. The object type is, of course, model. We have an antagonist available. And then the neighborhood scan we are going to mark as unsectioned because we want to scan the die inside the model without taking it out for an additional scan. When you're done with the order form definition, you go on to scan. Once you have selected scanning, on your screen, the Scanit Dental software should open up. And Scanit Dental is the piece of software that actually runs all of the 3Shape lab scanners, the D scanners, the E scanners, and now also the F8 scanner. And what is good to always remember is that in Scanit Dental software, on the left-hand side of the screen, we always have infographics that tell you exactly what to do, in which order. And it's always a good idea to check if it's giving you information on what you should be doing. So as an example, if, for example, the scanner asks you to put something in position number 1, but you put it in position number 2 instead, the scanner will not be getting the right input that it's asking for, and you might get scans in the wrong place at the wrong time. All right, so what is the scanner trying to, or the scanning software trying to tell us? Well, it is requesting us to use the position number 2, remember, in the back of the scanner, for the placement of the preparation arch, and in this case, it's of course the upper jaw. And then position 1 will be occupied by the antagonist, and it's here in the front of the scanner, and that will of course be the lower jaw. All right, let's mount our models on our transfer plate. Starting with the upper jaw. What I usually do is I take the transfer podium in my hands first. This is really up to you how you want to do it. And then I place the transfer plate on top of that. And as you can feel, there is a magnetic connection there, so you will not be in doubt whether it's in the right place. And remember, as it is with all 3 shape scanners. The imaginary patient's face should be always facing the back end of the scanner. So you would not be placing a model like this. You would be placing it like this. So, face of the patient. Upper jaw is now correctly mounted and ready to go. We'll just place it here on the table until we get the lower jaw ready. Again, facing the back end of the scanner, and that will be going on position number 1. I'll be placing the upper jaw into position number 2 first, and this is to not trigger the auto start, followed by the lower jaw in position number 1. Now, what is good to point your attention to at this point, we have a new functionality in the Scanit Dental software, and it is called skip manual selection. That means that you are now not requested to mark the areas that you want the scanner to scan. So in the previous versions of the software, you were required to mark an area of interest indicating the places that you want the scanner to scan. If you don't wish to do that, if you don't wish to have that dialogue and that functionality, you can enable the skip manual selection functionality. At this stage, the software asks you to mark the prepared tooth. In this case, we only have 1. And what is requested of you is that you actually place an annotation marker on the buccal margin line of the preparation. And this will then ensure that we have optimal mesh quality when we have the final scan at the end of the workflow. When the scanning is done, it's time to inspect the quality. And for the individual preparation or the die, it's a good idea to just check that you have the proximal contact areas and margin lines visible. And if there's any data missing, or if you have low quality data for whatever reason, you can always choose to use the detailed adaptive scanning functionality to acquire more information. If you're happy with the die, you can go on to the next step. This is where you will just quickly inspect the lower jaw scan quality. If you're happy with it, you can just go ahead. You can also trim it if you feel the need to do so. For the occlusion scanning step, we are going to remove both the upper and the lower jaw from the scanner, and we will also take out the transfer podiums. We will need to remount the models or reattach the models into the articulator. And also just make sure that we have the jaw relation that we need. And then finally, it's time to position our articulator plate inside the scanner the correct way. Here, what I want you to pay attention to is this little curved cutout in the plate. That basically is information for you to position the plate on the position number 1. So remember, 1 stripe for position number 1. Now, what is good to understand is that even though you might be tempted to place the plate right on top of the scanning platform, it is actually slightly off the center and placed directly on top of position number 1. It has a tight magnetic connection as well, so you will not be in doubt whether it's in the right place. You can even give it a small wiggle just to test it out. And for the placement of the articulator, we're going to use the same logic as always. the imaginary face of the patient should be looking at the back end of the scanner. And you also have these 3 lines indicating the back end and the front end of whichever articulator you choose to put inside the scanner. What is the main thing to understand is that since we have this white ring on top of the articulator plate, that is the place where you want to position the mounted models. When you are using the articulator plate, it's good to know that the auto start is actually not available, and you will need to press the next button to start the scanning. Then it's time to inspect the alignment results. If you are happy with the scan alignment, then you are free to proceed to the next step in the workflow. And this is just the final inspection of the scan and occlusion scan quality.